Welcome to Cwic Show. Is the Salvation Army going woke? If you follow this podcast, you know that what we try to do is track generally Christianity and watch how it is moving toward a social justice gospel, something that is changing the salvation-based gospel of Christ as the Redeemer of your sins individually to something completely different, which is based a little bit more on a political type of a Messiah. It's a move toward liberation theology. And we can see this in different sects of Christianity. We can see it sprouting up within and among the Latter-day Saints also. And so what I try to do here sometimes is go through and give you examples of where this is starting to move that way. This is not something where it's I'm trying to agitate. Well, I'll take that back. Maybe I am trying to agitate it because it is happening. And it's very concerning to me because I study these things and I can see the move that these denominations are making toward liberation theology, toward a critical social justice gospel that is moving in its value hierarchy, right? In its values hierarchy, where it's lowering the idea of a Redeemer of Christ and the gospel of Jesus Christ and moving up other important issues, but moving them up above that as a new gospel, which is focused on social justice. And again, this is not something that is completely out of the picture in Christianity. It is a part of this, right? If we look at certain issues of social justice, you'll find this in the Bible. You'll find this in the Book of Mormon. There are issues of social justice that are sometimes addressed by the prophets. It is addressed by Jesus. But when you take something of a lower rung on the ladder, something political, right? Something that is unjust, and you start to move it above the core, most important things of the gospel of Jesus Christ, you're looking at disaster for Christianity. And that's where we're trending toward at this time. And the Salvation Army here is another example. Now, there's some good news that goes along with this. But I think that by bringing this up and showing you a couple of things, I think that you're going to see, again, just these kind of steps that these denominations are making. Now, the Salvation Army, it's MSN that came out with an article on them. And they had written a document, a 60-page document on racism. And they basically, in this document, go over critical race theory and show why it is important, how people need to apologize for being white, how people need to apologize for the church. And they make recommendations that are absolutely critical race theory, right? They make recommendations for reading Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist and Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. And there was a lot of backlash, fortunately. This is a good thing. There was a lot of backlash to this, and so they removed the document from their website. It's no longer on there. They removed it just a couple of days ago. Now, why is this important to understand? Well, you need to see that these denominations are hiring and bringing in and adopting a critical social justice gospel. And it's becoming the forefront of what their message is. Now, I love the Salvation Army. Outside of the church, it's probably the best, it's one of the best charities that I would consider giving money to. I think they do a great job with the poor, a lot of other areas that they do a lot of good for. And so I think they do a great job. The concern is that as they move into critical social justice, and they're definitely doing that, then they're going to completely change the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And all it becomes is, right, fist up in the air, social justice is the message, not the gospel of Jesus Christ. And those are two completely different things. So the organization in the article shows that it denies that they were attempting to indoctrinate their employees and what they call salvationists. These are the people that are part of the Salvation Army that work with the Salvation Army. But that's not true. Again, if you're having them read Ibram Kendi and you're having them read Robin DiAngelo, you are definitely indoctrinating them. You cannot read those books and follow through on them without being immersed into an indoctrination of anti-racism and critical race theory. You're going to be activated in this into a social justice movement. And it is a movement. And it's a movement that is beginning to take roots into Christianity. So let's take a look at this article here. We can see here the title, and actually it looks like it's from the Washington Examiner, but it was on MSN News, is Salvation Army Defends Guide Telling White People to Apologize for Racism. So they go in and they come back after this. There's been some hoopla about their guide that was an internal guide, and they defend the guide at first. And they say, no, this isn't true. This is not what we were saying. And then, well, let's go into it a little bit, and we'll give you an idea of exactly how they try to wiggle through this. And you can see more and more how this movement, this virus of critical social justice, is moving into Christianity. Here's how the article opens up. The Salvation Army recently defended an internal racism guide that discouraged colorblindness. Now let's stop there for a minute. Discouraging colorblindness. This is an important issue, right? Because again, going back, the way you want to look at this is the split in the 60s between Martin Luther King, who was all for colorblindness, right? And assimilation to the principles of Americanism, of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. And on the other side, the radicals, who did not like what Martin Luther King was saying, but they supported him a little bit, as long as they could get a little bit of momentum and move the football forward in their own radical viewpoints. Critical race theory and critical social justice is the legacy of the radicals, not of Martin Luther King, not of the civil rights movement. Right? This critical social justice, critical race theory is against the civil rights movement, completely, blatantly against it. So colorblindness is an important touch point in looking at what we're trying to do as a society. Are we trying to be where we don't see race, or are we trying to say that everything is filtered through race, like critical race theory wants to say, like critical social justice wants to say? The issue is this, is that you can't completely be colorblind. That's the wrong thing. You want to accept people's backgrounds. You want to accept their heritage. You want all of that. I mean, as Latter-day Saints, we look at doing family history. Some people have a different family history than you do, right? You have different ethnicities, different colors. And so you want to accept all that's good there, but you want everyone to assimilate to proper principles. And yes, many of those principles are in a Western Christian heritage of the United States. It's something that has brought the world more good than anything else ever has. And Martin Luther King agreed with that, right? The I have a dream speech. Right? I have a dream that my kids and your kids will be able to be together and judge each other on the content of their character and not on the color of their skin. So that's what we really mean when we say color blindness. That's the important thing. So they're going to be against this because anti-racism does not like the term color blindness. They don't want that at all. They want as much color vision as possible. They want you to wear glasses with race on them everywhere. That's what it's about. So let's continue with what it says here. So the Salvation Army recently defended an internal racism guide that discouraged colorblindness and encouraged staff members to apologize for being white after the guide faced backlash. Okay, so that's at least through implication and the references they made to Ibram, Kendi, and Robin DiAngelo's books. So at first they defend it. Now they've taken down the article. Let's go on with the next paragraph here. The Salvation Army argued the new guide was meant to encourage discussion about racism among members of the Salvation Army. Okay? The organization denied attempting to indoctrinate or tell its donors what to think reminding people that the guide was meant for internal use. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it was meant for internal use. It's the way they're trying to run the Salvation Army, a Christian organization. And if they're moving from the gospel of Jesus Christ to social justice, that's an important thing for people to know, especially donors, to know about this. The good news is that there was enough of a backlash against this that they at least removed the guide so far, right? Don't think for a moment that they're going to start backpedaling on this. They took one step back. But I'll show you in a minute why I just don't think that they're going to be, and most of Christianity is not going to continue to backpedal on this. The article then quotes the Salvation Army, and here's what they say, quote, "The Salvation Army has occasionally published study guides on various complex topics, including race, to help foster positive conversations and reflections among Salvationists." Again, Salvationists are those within the Salvation Army. But again, you're not fostering positive conversations with Ibram, Kendi, and Robin DiAngelo. You're doing the exact opposite. You are splitting everybody apart. The leftists have done an incredible job of conflating the issue of race with leftism, hard leftism, as if it's one and the same thing, right? That if we are to have redemption, if we are to have any kind of reconciliation and support for those that are on the fringes, that the only way to do this is with a hard leftist doctrine. And if you disagree with it, well, then you must be racist or homophobic or xenophobic or whatever it might be. There are many, many good ways to reconcile things, to make things better. And we've done a fairly good job of this. Not great, but a fairly good job of this over time. There is much, much, much less racism in this country than there was 50, 60 years ago. But if you read anybody who talks about critical race theory, or if you go into the humanities at any United States campus, university campus, you'd think that it is everywhere, right? Because that's what they want you to believe. It's in every system. It's in every person, especially if you're white. They have to agitate it. They have to pour salt on the scratches that you have. The quote continues, "The hope is that by openly discussing these issues, we can encourage a more thoughtful organization that is better positioned to serve those in need. These guides are solely designed for internal use. No one is being told how to think." That is period. They emphasize period. That is not true. They don't read those books. Do not read Ibram Kendi and do not read Robin DiAngelo and do not make reference to them. Do not suggest that people that are Salvationists read those books, because that's exactly what they do. They tell you how to think. And if you don't think that way, then you're a racist. That's exactly what Ibram Kendi says. For Robin DiAngelo, it doesn't matter which way you think. You're a racist anyway. Encouraging a more thoughtful organization that is better positioned to serve those in need. This is not the way to do it. Critical race theory and social justice is not the way to do it. Hard leftist doctrines have been tried over and over again, and they leave behind a trail of suffering and death and tears and poverty. And to be within Christianity, to be a Christian organization that is beginning to lift this social justice up higher and higher, is just creating an implosion of religion, an implosion of Christianity. All right, now coming down here a little bit further, we get back to the article talking about the what was implied in the document on racism. It says the group also denied suggesting the U.S. is inherently racist and said it did not tell people to apologize for being white. Well, it implied this, and it made reference to the books that blatantly talk about this. It goes on, and I'm quoting the Salvation Army here. "Those claims are false, and they distort the very goal of our work. The truth is that the Salvation Army believes that racism is fundamentally incompatible with Christianity." It is. But why are you bringing in hard leftist doctrine as a solution? We are called to work toward a world where all people are loved, accepted, and valued. Our positional statement on racism makes this clear. This is not the statement that they had up, the 60-page document that was put up on racism. They're now putting up a different statement on racism that does not have any of these things in it. It's a good statement, but they're acting as if that's what they had up there. It is not. It's a completely different document. Christianity is completely incompatible with racism. Absolutely it is. The answer is not critical race theory. That is not Christianity. That is not the gospel. That is liberation theology. That is hard leftist doctrine. You wouldn't introduce hard right doctrine, I wouldn't imagine, as some type of a solution. You don't invite a hard leftist way of thinking, a radical way of thinking that is diametrically opposed to the gospel of Jesus Christ and its core tenets, its core doctrines, as if that is something that is working toward a world where all people are loved, accepted, and valued. It's the exact opposite. Those doctrines of hard leftism are not Christian. They're not practical. And they're not righteous. A group called Color Us United advocates for uniting the U.S. rather than separating it by color. That's the way it should be. They recently put out a petition condemning the Salvation Army's racism guide. So a lot of people signed this petition. This was part of the backlash to their document on racism. Internal or not, it doesn't matter. You can kind of get the wheels turning in your mind as to how this might have happened. Who is it that said, let's put this 60-page document together? Who is it that said, this is, we're going to take on the tenets of critical race theory and social justice in this document? Who was it who said that we need to try and get those that are a part of the Salvation Army to read Ibram Kendi and to read Robin DiAngelo? I mean, should we add Karl Marx on there? Do we add Herbert Marcuse? Angela Davis? Now, compare all of this to what they still hold as their mission statement. We'll monitor this. We'll see over the next months, couple years, I don't know, if they stick to the same mission statement or if they start introducing the language of social justice into it. But here's what their current mission statement says. The Salvation Army, an international movement, is an evangelical part of the universal Christian church. Its message is based on the Bible. Its ministry is motivated by the love of God. Its mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and to meet human needs in his name without discrimination. That sounds wonderful. That is a wonderful mission statement. And that's why so many people give to the Salvation Army. Critical race theory and social justice are opposed to this mission statement. You have to wonder if the Salvation Army, as it came under fire a few years ago, where it was being told it had to leave, what was it, the Walmarts and other places where the Santas out front that are ringing the bell and asking you to make change in dollar bills and whatnot, put donations into the pot. There was a lot of pushback on them. You have to wonder, okay, are they surrendering to pressure? Or is it just that they now have internalized through those that have come through university? It's where it comes from. And are now more a part of their organization. And they're adopting this. Is it becoming a core tenet? Because those people are not going to change. If those are the people that you've hired, if those are the people that are in positions of power and influence and of importance within the Salvation Army, this is simply a step backwards, right? One little backpedal. that for a while, until it dies down, they'll start pushing and moving forward again, because they are indoctrinated, because it is a worldview, because it is an ideology. And this is what we're going to start seeing in all of the denominations, I believe, including with the Latter-day Saints. Now, why, you say, well, Greg, that can't happen with the Latter-day Saints. It already is. I get reports all over the place about the doctrine of Christ being changed in elders' quorum, in Relief Society, from the pulpit in fast and testimony meeting, or in sacrament meeting in a talk, where the terminology of social justice is being brought out and where the value is changed, right? That Christianity and the message of Christ is about fighting off the oppressors. This is a major concern. I had one more comment by that organization called Color Us United. They say this, and they're absolutely correct. Anti-racism, because it's not what you think it is. Anti-racism being one perspective among many, and one that rejects other approaches. It has to be, it's our way or the highway for them. Consequently invalidates any other view of race. And this is what I said, leftists have done such a great job of conflating these ideas. You either follow their leftist approach, their social justice approach, or get out of the boat, or we're going to accuse you of many different things. This was part of their petition. It goes on, by proxy, we believe the Salvation Army has nullified any other avenue of exploring the very complex issue of race. And I think that is very true. Once you introduce critical race theory and critical social justice, you're introducing an ideology that says no to everything else. It is only our way. It is not a diversity of ideas that critical social justice seeks. It's those that are trained in what they call diversity and inclusion, which really just means diversity and inclusion within our ideology. It really means being indoctrinated into anti-racism. Now, back to their website, and these are just screenshots of their site. This is of their international website. You can see here that on this screenshot on this page, this is the Salvation Army Social Justice Commission. Right, this is their social justice. So they have a department that is over social justice. This is going to take over their entire organization. And unless you snuff it out, there's no way it's not going to take over their entire organization. Is the primary value and the primary means of accomplishing what they're trying to accomplish. And it's going to take over their mission statement. But here's what it says: go and do something. The International Social Justice Commission. And then you have a couple of different groups, sections down here. That one's called Cry Justice, 21st Century Moral and Social Justice Issues. There's some good things in here, but again, it's treated under the umbrella of social justice, not under the umbrella of Christianity. Another one is Take Action to End Gender-Based Violence. Okay, right. Another one here is Seeking Justice Together Under Poverty. Here's a problem that I have with the whole idea of, especially of Christianity using social justice, right? You've got two sides of the pendulum here. You've got, and we work with both. In my podcast, I talk a lot about the higher and the lower laws. You have the higher law of mercy, grace, charity, right? That's what comes down from God. And then you have the lower law, which is justice. And it's what holds us back from the tree of life. It's what holds Adam and Eve back in the Garden of Eden, right? That cherubim with a flaming sword is justice. That's what that means. That's what it represents. And so when you move from what we already call a charity, right? We're moving from the higher law to the lower law. We're moving from the pure doctrine of Christ to justice, to a lower law. So now this is about what? It's about a point of view of justice in poverty, and not a point of view of love and charity, putting our arms around others and treating them as individuals and the great value that each of them have. And how do we help them and move them into a state of not being in poverty, as being one example. But instead, see, it flips it to the other side. And it says, no, this is justice. It is about justice. And this is the problem. This will never work. This never works because you create a victim and an oppressor. And whenever you use those two objects as your filter for the world and for social issues, then you are creating conflict. You're not creating peace. You are creating conflict. And that's going to make things worse than they were before. So justice is the wrong word to even be using. It is the wrong approach to come from. So again, another example here in Christianity that we continue to uncover as the very obvious march of Christianity in the West, especially in the United States, from salvation theology and the doctrine of Christ to a liberation theology built on social justice. And you can see the remnants of this with the Salvation Army. This is the U.S. website that they have here, What We Do. Look what's the first things that come up. Holiday giving. Okay, great. It's the Christmas time. You definitely want that up. The next thing is LGBTQ support. Look, I'm all for LGBTQ support. But this is at the top of their tree here, their navigation. And then the next one is commitment to diversity. So see, you can see this is moving in their, just following their navigation, you can see the move in their values into identitarianism and social justice. Again, it's not that those things aren't important, but when you lower the value of the doctrine of Christ and of Christianity as a whole, the gospel, and you raise these other identitarian race and sexual orientation and gender, you raise these other things, and especially under an umbrella of social justice, you're destroying the message of the Bible. You're destroying the message of the gospel. You're destroying the message of Jesus Christ.